Kaiserliche und Königliche Kriegsmarine, aka the Austro-Hungarian Navy, is a little bit of a dark horse when it comes to capital ship design in World War I, as they continued developing ideas for new capital ships at a time when several other larger navies had reduced or even temporarily paused new warship design. The Ersatz Monarch class was supposed to be the next step beyond the Tegetthoffs, but with the political situation much changed since they were first sketched, a series of design studies were initiated to see what needed to be built next. This went down two lines: a surprisingly wide variety of battle cruisers, which we'll look at in another video, and whose design work took up much of the mid-war period, but by 1917 they were facing the possible completion of one or more of the Francesco Caracciolo class in Italy, and so what was termed Project 3 was initiated, Projects 1 and 2 having been some of the battlecruiser designs. By this stage in the war, it was known that the British had of course commissioned the Queen Elizabeth and Revenge class battleships armed with 15-inch guns, and they were working on the Renown class battlecruisers. The Austro-Hungarian Empire's German allies were also building the Bayern class and planning the Ersatz Yorks, which had similar guns, and so along with Italian efforts, it seemed the 15-inch gun was going to be the new standard for a while. However, the situation faced by the Austro-Hungarian Navy did not call for especially long ranges to their ships, and their shipyards did have some restrictions in terms of size. Ultimately, with the Italian ships as opposed to the British being the ones they mainly needed to worry about, this is what they would design against. Therefore, the first design that emerged was for a 30,000-ton vessel capable of 25 knots, courtesy of 75,000 shaft horsepower, driving 4 screws. Armour would consist of 12 inches of belt protection and just under 2 inches of deck armour, which was relatively light for the period, but similar to the Italian designs. Main armament consisted of 8 380mm or 15-inch guns in 4 twin turrets, positioned in super-firing pairs fore and aft, with 18 single casement-mounted 150mm guns as a secondary battery, and a tertiary battery of 88mm guns, some anti-torpedo boat and some anti-aircraft variants, plus half a dozen underwater torpedo tubes. However, since the Ersatz Monarchs were themselves suspended for the duration of hostilities, it was decided to iterate on Project 3 so as to ensure that whenever the war ended, naturally assuming an Austro-Hungarian victory, whatever was drawn up was going to reflect the latest in naval thinking. Thus, whilst Project 3 was effectively done by summer 1917, Project 5 was begun, the gap being because Project 4 was yet another battlecruiser idea. Like 3, 5 drew on the preceding battlecruiser design for general cues, and the new ship was much larger, at just over 37,000 tons, with some economy being found in the use of only 56,000 shaft horsepower for an expected top speed of 24 knots via 4 screws. Armour appears to have remained unchanged at 12 inches of belt and just under 2 inches of deck, representing either a highly optimistic assessment of that protection's capabilities, or possibly it was merely a placeholder starting point for further work later on. With the larger hull, the secondary battery was increased to no less than 20 single 150mm guns in casemates, and the half-dozen underwater torpedo tubes were also present. Innovations, however, came firstly in the form of the ship's anti-aircraft battery, which consisted of 4 single dual-purpose 150mm guns in turrets, 2 per side amidships. Whilst this was a somewhat optimistic calibre for dual-purpose use in the First World War, the fact that it was supposed to be dual-purpose at all, and the calibre was consistent with the majority of the secondary battery, reflected some fairly advanced thinking. The other step forward was of course the main armament. This was still contained in 4 twin turrets mounted fore and aft in super-firing pairs, but the calibre had been cranked right up to 16.5 inches, a calibre shared by the latest Imperial German designs, something that is extremely unlikely to be mere coincidence, these guns for example being planned for the L-20 design series in their northern ally. Of course, World War I did not go the Austro-Hungarian Empire's way, so neither ship type was ever actually ordered, much less laid down, and given the cost of the Ersatz Monarchs and the arguments those caused, it would have been a rather fun day to watch the governmental debates about funding them if they'd been put forward in one way or another. Both designs had benefited from post-Jutland analysis, both by the Austro-Hungarian Navy staff and reports passed down from the Germans, but in the end they were largely speculative designs since, despite the designers' best efforts, they still would have needed additional funding to expand the slipways, dry docks and other port facilities, as well as expanding and altering the railway lines from the Skoda gun foundries to the shipyards to accommodate Project 5's guns. In the end, the Navy did request funding for new battleships in 1918, but this seems to have been for yet another design whose sketches either haven't survived, or perhaps it was just a speculative call for a rough set of capabilities, these being a battleship of 32,000 tons, which displacement-wise is somewhere between Projects 3 and 5, which somehow would have a top speed of 28 knots, which was well in excess of both. But, as mentioned, the collapse of the Austro-Hungarian Empire put an end to any such ideas, whatever they might have dreamed about.
That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you have a comment or suggestion for a ship to review, let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to comment on the pinned post for dry dock questions.